Hello everyone, today we will learn 4 trade terms applicable to sea and inland waterway transportation. They are FAS, FOB, CFR, and CIF with the later 3, being commonly used international trade terms. First, FAS. The full name of FAS is Free Alongside Ship Delivery at the Loading Port. Designated loading port refers to the seller on the date specified in the contract, delivering the goods to the ship designated by the buyer at the loading port, or delivering them by obtaining the goods already delivered to the ship's side, shall transfer upon delivery to the ship, and the buyer shall bear all expenses from that time onwards. First, borne by both the buyer and the seller on the FAS terminology, the main responsibilities, risks, and expenses are shown in the figure. Second, when using FAS terminology, the following issues should be noted. First, when using FAS terminology for transactions in North American countries, the word vessel should be added after FAS to clearly indicate delivery at the ship's side. Second, pay attention to the connection between the ship and cargo, as FAS is the responsibility of the buyer to arrange the transportation of goods. The buyer should promptly notify the seller of the name of the vessel and the specific time and the location required for loading, so that the seller can prepare for delivery on time. Third, FAS only requires the seller to handle the export customs clearance of the goods. Fourth, the seller has no obligation to enter into a transportation contract with the buyer. Fifth, the seller has no obligation to enter into an insurance contract with the buyer. Second, FOB, free on board, delivery on board, designated loading port, refers to the seller loading the goods onto the ship designated by the buyer at the designated loading port, or delivering them by obtaining the goods already delivered to the ship. The risk of loss or damage to the goods is transferred upon delivery to the ship, and the buyer assumes all risks from then on the FOB terms, borne by both the buyer and the seller. The responsibilities, costs, and risks are shown in the figure. Second, when using FOB terms, the following issues should be noted. First, the designated port of shipment is inserted after FOB. FOB 大连. 大连 is the designated loading port. Second, pay attention to the connection between the ship and the cargo. On the FOB terms, the buyer is responsible for arranging the means of transportation, and the seller shall load the goods onto the ship within the agreed loading period and port specified in the contract. If the buyer fails to dispatch the ship on time, including dispatching the ship in advance, or delaying it to the loading port without the consent of the other party, the seller has the right to refuse delivery, and all losses incurred as a result, such as demurrage or demurrage fees, shall be borne by the buyer. If the buyer dispatches the ship to the loading port on schedule and gives sufficient notice to the seller, but the seller fails to ship the goods in a timely manner due to the unavailability of the goods, the above-mentioned expenses shall be borne by the seller. Third, in the 1990 revised definition of U.S. foreign trade, there are different interpretations of FOB. First, FOB vessel refers to delivery on board at the loading port. Please note to add vessel before the loading port. Second, regarding the issue of export customs clearance, the 2020 general rules stipulate that the seller should handle the export customs clearance procedures and bear all export taxes and fees, while the revised definition stipulates that the buyer should be responsible for applying for the license and the cost of export customs clearance. Fourth, Similar to FAS, FOB only requires the seller to handle the export customs clearance of the goods. The seller has no obligation to enter into a transportation contract or insurance contract with the buyer. Third, the variation of FOB term refers to the addition of words and phrases after the FOB trade term to clarify who bears the cost of chartering the ship for transportation. Common FOB deformations include FOB shipping terms, FOB delivery under hook, FOB shipping fee included, FOB flat cabin fee included, FOB leveling fee included. The above definition of FOB is only to indicate who bears the shipping cost and does not affect the delivery location and risk boundary. In practice, it should be clearly stipulated in the sales contract whether this definition is limited to the division of expenses or includes risks. Third, CFR. The full name of CFR is cost and freight, cost plus freight, specified destination port, which refers to the seller loading the goods on the agreed date in the contract onto the buyer's designated vessel or delivering them by acquiring the goods already delivered to the vessel. The risk of loss or damage to the goods is transferred upon delivery to the ship. The seller should sign a contract to transport the goods to the designated destination port and pay the necessary costs and freight under CFR terms borne by both parties. The main responsibilities, costs, and risks are shown in the figure below. When using CFR terminology, the issues to be noted are: first, the designated destination port is inserted after CFR. CFR Shenzhen. Shenzhen is the destination port. Second, the loading port and destination port are both important and should be specified as accurately as possible in the contract. Third, the seller shall promptly issue a shipping notice, otherwise the risk cannot be exempted from liability on the grounds that it is transferred after the goods are loaded onto the ship. The variation of CFR terminology refers to the addition of words and phrases after CFR trade terms to indicate who bears the unloading costs. Common CFR definitions: first, CFR shipping conditions; second, CFR unloading onto the shore; third, handover on the CFR hook; fourth, CFR bottom delivery, CIF. The full text of CIF is cost, insurance, and freight. Designated destination port refers to the seller delivering the goods on board the ship or by obtaining the goods that have already been delivered in this way. The risk of loss or damage to the goods is transferred upon delivery to the ship. The seller should sign a contract to transport the goods to the designated destination port, pay the necessary costs and freight, and insure the buyer against the risk of loss or damage to the goods during transportation. First, under CIF terms borne by both parties, the main responsibilities, costs, and risks are shown in the figure. Second, issues to be noted when using CIF terms. First, the CIF is followed by the designated destination port, CIF Shenzhen. Shenzhen is the destination port. Second, regarding the issue of chartering and booking ships, if there is no contrary agreement, the seller is only responsible for according to the usual conditions and customary rules. Renting appropriate vessel to transport the goods to the destination port. If the buyer requests the destination of certain vessels or impose special requirements on the vessels, the seller, based on the specific circumstance, may accept or refuse. Third, the issue of insurance coverage is settled under CIF terms, and the insurance premium is included in the price of the goods. Generally, when signing a scarce contract, the insurance terms of the contract clearly specify the insurance type, insurance amount and other contents, and the seller shall insure according to the provisions of the contract. But if the contract fails to make specific provisions on insurance coverage and other issues, it should be handled according to relevant conventions. Fourth, symbolic delivery issue. The CIF term is a typical symbolic delivery. Symbolic delivery refers to the seller completing the shipment at the agreed location on time and submitting relevant documents, including property rights certificates as stipulated in the contract to the buyer, thus fulfilling the delivery obligation. Without the need to guarantee delivery, the seller shall deliver the goods based on the documents, and the buyer shall make payment based on the documents. Fifth, CIF is not the landed price according to CIF terms, although the seller arranges the shipment and handles the freight insurance. The seller does not assume the obligation to guarantee the delivery of the goods to the destination port. Third, the definition of CIF is the same as that of CFR terminology. Today, we've learned FAS, FOB, CFR, and CIF, 4 trade terms. Please complete the exercises after class. See you next time.